Hey, what's up, everybody? Chris Martinez here. I am the host of Operation Agency Freedom. And today in this episode, we are going to talk about KPIs for your operations team. So if you have a team that is fulfilling client projects, then you're absolutely going to want to pay attention to this episode. So when I started out, I had a very small team. This is back in 2012 when I started my agency. We had a very, very small team. And then over the years, obviously now with Dude, we have a pretty big team, around 90 folks. And I've learned a lot. And one of the biggest lessons that I've learned is that I'm not the best when it comes to managing the operations team. So since we've brought on an operations manager, our company has grown tremendously. And he is doing a fantastic job. So I've been able to learn from him and everybody on that team, really. And so that's what I'm going to talk about today, are the key performance indicators that you need to be managing as the CEO of your agency. And you can take everything that I'm going to teach you today and try and apply it to your own agency. So if you have an operations team and you want to figure out how to better manage those folks, if you want to figure out what are some of the objectives that they should be accomplishing and how to help them accomplish those objectives, and then also just how to be a better manager in general, then you're definitely going to want to pay attention to this episode, because I'm going to share all the things that I've learned over the years. And like usual, go to the website and we'll have the notes and any links that I talk about. And then, of course, subscribe to my podcast, and that way you'll be the first to know when we have a new episode that's coming out. So let's head over to the full episode. All right, welcome back. So we're going to talk about key performance indicators for your operations team. The way that we break out our operations team is it's the team of people that are essentially fulfilling client projects. So these are your designers, these are your developers, copywriters, basically anybody that is touching a client project is on your operations team. And so it is also very helpful if you have an operations manager who basically manages that entire team. That's what I have now. When I started, though, it was just me. I did have a partner. He was supposed to be managing the operations team, but it ended up falling on my shoulders. Of course, that person is no longer a partner with me anymore. So I'm going to talk to you guys about some of the key things that you need to be looking at when you're gauging the success or failure of your operations team. So the first thing that I'm going to talk about is retention. And it could be, or I think I see sometimes where agencies overlook that retention a lot of the times is impacted by the operations team. So at the end of the day, like, it's a collaboration between your customer experience team and your operations team, because your customer experience team knows what we need to do to keep the clients happy. And your operations team is then responsible for actually delivering that. So the two, really do work hand in hand. So retention is the first thing that I would look at with your operations team. If your retention is not where it needs to be, and your customer experience team is doing everything that they need to be doing, then we need to look deeply at the operations and figure out what's not working. So another way to kind of like put it is that operations is essentially responsible for delivering and hitting the target KPIs that the CX team has uncovered and knows that drive happy clients. So your CX team is basically like in the weeds with the clients, and they're looking at the data and they know exactly what creates a happy client. That information then gets passed over to the operations team, and they're now responsible for executing on all those things that the CX team knows creates happy clients. So it's a very, very symbiotic relationship between the two. Your CX team and your operations manager, or your CX manager and your operations manager, they need to be talking almost on a daily basis, because those two are so intertwined in terms of keeping the retention number where it needs to be. So another aspect of operations, and this is kind of like on the management level. So if you're in your agency, you got a small agency, you're also doing project management and managing the operations side, I'm speaking directly to you. If you are a CEO of an agency and you have an operations manager, then this is something that they need to know is important or a part of their job responsibilities. So the operations manager is essentially providing coaching and mentorship to the teams. So within the teams, you can have your design development team, so on and so forth. So the operations manager is responsible for making sure that they are educated and know how to do their projects and their job to the best of their abilities. Now, if you have managers that are below the operations manager, so like in our instance, we have the operations manager and then we have pods. And on the pods, they have the pod leader. So that pod leader is kind of like the manager of the pod. So our operations manager is constantly providing education, support, and coaching and mentorship to the pod leaders. So that's another responsibility that they have. And especially if people are not hitting their goals, then we need to identify what is not being hit and then figure out a way to coach them so that they are now able to accomplish the goals. It's really, really important that you have data. This is crucial for the way that we manage our folks. So if we have evidence that somebody is not accomplishing what they need to be accomplishing, the first thing that we do is we go into the data. We go into the facts. So we find the conversations or the tickets or basically anything that shows us proof, like hardcore proof that's indisputable that the person made a mistake. And then we talk about the impact that that had on the team, on the business, on the client. It's very, very important. To me, it's not even worth talking to the team member about to try and resolve a problem if you don't have those facts, because then it's almost like hearsay and that can snowball into a bigger problem. And then, people might not be trusting each other and then you've got a mess. So don't even have the conversation of providing, some feedback to the client or to the team member about what they did wrong unless you have the facts. So after that, once you establish the facts, then you can work with the team member to create a plan to fix that issue. I personally, my management style is I like to let the team member kind of come up with their plan for improving the performance. I always have an idea of what I want them to do. My goal is to get that person to basically come up with the answer on their own so that I'm not having to force my plan on them. The chances that that team member is going to implement and successfully fulfill that plan is much, much higher if they feel like they're the ones that came up with the plan. So typically anytime, and I'm not, going in and giving mentorship specifically to our designers and our developers. I typically work with the management team. Sometimes I'll work with the pod leaders. But at the end of the day, like my goal is to basically help our team members identify, well, first it's to show them where the problems are and then help that team member to identify the steps that they need to take to fix that particular issue. If they miss anything, I'll give them a little bit of guidance. I'll say, well, have you thought about this? Have you thought about maybe doing this? And da-da-da-da. Then I always make sure that we have a deadline. So we have a deadline in terms of when that team member is expected to fix that problem and what are the things that are going to identify that they've actually fixed the issue. So you never want to just like leave it open-ended or not like, or a little bit vague. You need to say by this date. So then what you're saying is that by this date, you're going to have accomplished X, Y, and Z. And that way we can go exactly to that date and we can say, you did it. You're fantastic, great job. Thank you very much. Or you can say, you know what, you didn't do that. Let's talk about what happened. And then maybe after that, there's some consequences or you have to come up with a performance improvement plan or something like that. But it's very, very important that you have a clear objective and a deadline as to how and when that person is going to solve the issue. When that team member creates the plan themselves, then 99 times out of 100, they're going to be able to hit the target. I can't even remember the last time where the team member ended up creating the plan. I kind of like signed off on it and the team member did not fix the issue. It works that method, at least for me and with my team members and our company culture, that works really, really well. Now, here's a little kind of bonus is that when that team member accomplishes the goal, we then give that team member the opportunity to teach other people and kind of talk through their experience and what they learned. So now it becomes a teaching moment, and that person can kind of take pride in the fact that they fixed an issue. And the other team members look up to that individual and they see that they can learn something from that team member. It also lets the team member know that like making mistakes isn't the end of the world, and that fixing them actually, we really, really like to highlight that to everybody else. So there's kind of like a twofold bonus there. Maybe it's a threefold bonus. I don't know. Okay. So another role of the operations manager is to make sure that we're providing praise and recognition to the team members that are doing really well. This is something that I personally am not very good at. And I think partly because I don't necessarily need praise and recognition all the time. I'm kind of heads down. I'm just going to do it. I don't care if you're hating on me, or I don't care if you're giving me praise. I'm just going to keep working. So I kind of overlook the importance of this with other team members. The operations manager is responsible for providing praise and recognition, as is the other managers on the team. And so it's very important that you create a culture of praising and recognizing people for doing great things. I think in our industry, in the agency industry, it's something that we definitely don't do enough of. So internally, we have a thing that we call our Dynamite Dude program. And this is basically a program that we created that is ultimately run by the staff. So every single quarter, we have an internal web form, and our staff can go and nominate somebody for what we call the Dynamite Dude Award. So how do you win the Dynamite Dude Award? You have to, first of all, the team member is nominating somebody else. So they're going out of their way to help somebody else on their team get recognition and ultimately win an award. There is no guarantee that it will be reciprocated either. So they're just literally giving of themselves, their time and their effort to fill this out to help out another team member. It's really, really important that you guys understand the importance of that. The Dynamite Dude Award, basically the team member who's nominating somebody goes in and writes the specific ticket or the specific event or client that team member then went above and beyond the call of duty to help that person accomplish something. So let me give you an example. So let's say that we had a client request come in. There was a deadline. There was let's say it was a last minute request. And this team member stayed late and worked and made sure that this particular client was helped beyond normal hours, right? And, let's say they stayed up and did a call with a client, was working till 8 or 9 o'clock at night, when they clearly did not have to do that, but they knew that the impact that it would have on that client, and they wanted to make sure the client was taken care of. So they just stayed late, helped the client out. So let's say that the pod leader, the manager, then writes or nominates the employee, the developer who stayed on, nominates them and said, hey, this was the request. This is what they did. It really helped out the client. Everybody was happy, da-da-da-da-da. So then the pod leader submits the Dynamite Dude nomination. That goes to the HR team and the operations team. And then we all have a quick meeting before our quarterly call. And we review all the Dynamite Dude nominations. And we say, okay, this one definitely hit it. This one did not. This one hit it. This one did not. On our quarterly meeting, then we recognize all the people who got nominated, and they get a spin on the wheel. And then they get, I think it's anywhere from $5 to $25 gift card or something like that. So the other thing is that we're recognizing the team member who nominated the individual. And that's really important to our culture, because we want to build a culture where we are trying to lift our team members up. So, that's just part of what we do and who we are as a company, is we are giving of ourselves to help other people. I talk about this all the time. One of my favorite Zig Ziglar quotes is that you can have anything that you want in this world as long as you help enough other people get what they want. So that kind of this Dynamite Dude program plays into that. The only caveat with the Dynamite Dude program is that none of these nominations can come from me. It all has to come from the other staff. So I'm actually not able to participate in this program as much as I want to from time to time. So it really is a program that is run by the team members, not top down. It comes organically from the team. So that's definitely something that we do that helps us to build this culture of praising and recognizing people on a consistent basis. All right, so let's shift gears. Another responsibility of your operations team is to make sure that they are hitting the deadlines. Oh my God, this is something that is so unbelievably important in my industry with Dude and kind of like the outsourcing. Nobody, except for us, of course, can hit freaking deadlines. Like, I don't understand why it's so hard. I don't know if it's a cultural thing or if they just don't know how to manage the projects properly. But this is everybody's big frustration when they're outsourcing. It's that, the team says, oh, it's going to be ready by this date. And then, of course, it's never ready by that date. And not only is it not ready by the date, but they let you know like 2 hours before it's supposed to be ready. So like you might have told your client like, hey, I'm going to have this ready for you, at this time. And then the people that are responsible for doing the work, they screw it up. And now you've got egg on your face and you look bad in front of your customer. So to us, we knew going into starting Dude that we had to hit deadlines. So obviously internally, we've got multiple layers of people looking to make sure that we're hitting deadlines. You and your agency, you guys have to hit deadlines. I'm telling you, like I've talked about bridge, connect, and deliver. Hitting deadlines is very much a part of deliver. You have to be a person of your word. Your clients already have a negative taste in their mouth when it comes to working with digital agencies. It most likely it's not even something that you did. They worked with a digital agency who didn't know what the fuck they were doing, and then they screwed up the project. And now, unfortunately, all the businesses out there kind of package all of the digital marketing people into one box, and they say they all suck. They never do what they say they're going to do. They never hit deadlines. So that's on your shoulders now, agency owner, is that you have to hit deadlines. Your operations team is very much in charge of hitting the deadlines. So they got to scope out the projects correctly. They got to hold everybody accountable. They got to make sure on a daily basis that we're on track to hit deadlines. We also do our internal daily deadline meeting. That's where each team talks to each team member every single morning. And we go through all the tickets that are open. And we have each team member has to say, yes, I'm going to hit the deadline. Yes, I'm going to hit the deadline. Yes, I'm going to hit the deadline. If they have a problem and they need to talk about it afterwards, then after everybody's gone through their projects, people can talk about the issue. And if other team members want to stay on to help that team member get that project back on track, then we can do that right away. So it's so unbelievably important to hit deadlines. I cannot stress that enough. Next responsibility for the operations team is related to QA. So you guys have to make sure that there's great work coming out. Nothing should go out to a client unless it's the best work that you can do. In my opinion, it's better to extend a deadline out, and you want to do this at the beginning. Make an ETA longer if it's going to ensure that the work is fantastic. Don't rush a deadline and compromise on the quality of the work. It's just not worth it. So we have a QA team. So we have processes and everything. So they fall under the operations team and the operations manager. So we have certain metrics that we're looking at for them, like how many client complaints are we getting because of QA? Like we have a number that they have to keep it below. The QA team is also incentivized based on how great the work is. So like if they have a certain number of complaints, then they have a bonus. So they either don't get the full bonus or they don't get any bonus. So it's really important that the QA team is doing a fantastic job and hitting their targets. One of the things that we have our operations manager doing, like shifting now into the numbers, is that we have the operations manager who also is aware of the productivity, the cost of goods sold, and the gross margin for the teams. So in our case, we have pods, right? So we've got, 7 pods or however many we have. And each pod is responsible for hitting a specific gross margin. So the operations manager knows what the salaries are for each of the team members on each pod and the revenue. And so we make sure that percentage of labor falls in line with the revenue and what we need to see in terms of a gross margin. The operations manager is very much in charge of that. So he or she can move team members around if needed to ensure that we're hitting the margins that we need. So it's another set of eyes to manage that aspect of the business. Obviously, like they're not the only ones who are controlling that financial piece of the puzzle. We've got the accounting team, the finance team that's looking at that. And then of course, I'm looking at it as well. But it does help, especially if you're a smaller team, if you can have an operations person that can kind of be that second set of eyes. Really makes your job a lot easier. And they're also going to be able to come up with solutions. If you're having an issue, if they're privy to that information, then they can come up with a solution. And then you guys can kind of brainstorm on what's the best way to solve any particular issues. So that's very, very important. One thing that I want you all to understand when it comes to the operations team in general is this concept of utilization. So back before I started my agency, or actually, I think I might have been doing this when I was moonlight. No, this is before I started the agency. I was working for a charter bus company. So for those that don't know, I had my first business in 2007. I started a print soccer magazine. I didn't know anything about running a print publication, lost everything, and then started learning about digital marketing in my free time. But in between my business going under, that soccer magazine going under, and me starting the digital agency, I worked for a charter bus company doing sales. And that was when I was first introduced to this concept of utilization. So in the bus business, you got 52 seats on a bus, and that bus can only run a maximum of 10 hours per day. And, in any given month, 31 days a month. So let's just call it 30.4, I think is the actual multiple. So you can run 10 hours a day times 30. So that means you have 300 hours a month that bus can run. The full utilization of that bus then is 300 hours. You cannot exceed more than 300 hours. Why is it 10 hours and not 24? Because legally, you cannot operate a bus more than 10 hours a day. You cannot have a driver behind the wheel for more than 10 hours a day. That's the legal maximum. And they do that to make sure that people aren't, driving tired or being pushed too hard, and then you have accidents and people die, and that's obviously bad. So that was the utilization. So they say, basically the way that the bus business works is they say that if the bus is running for, I believe, 60% of the time, that should be your break-even point. So most of these bus companies, these charter bus companies that are doing like tours and stuff, they, buy the bus on a loan. And so let's say they buy the bus for $500,000 and their note on that is, I don't know, $20,000 a month. So you need to price out your daily rate, your 10-hour rate, so that at 60% utilization with gas and everything, driver fees, gas, everything, you're breaking even on that coach running for, let's just call it 20 days a month. And then everything thereafter, those other 10 days a month are a profit. That's typically how the bus business works. So I learned that. And then I was like, now that I'm running the agency and I have a big team, and I'm like, wow, like we have a total utilization number with our teams. What we learned is that even though our staff are working 40 hours a week, it is unrealistic that we can have them be working on client work for the full 40 hours. It's just unrealistic. It's too much typically for one person to be able to do, because you reach a certain point where the quality of the work starts to go down. It varies from person to person, but typically there is a limit. So that we consider that almost like a utilization. I believe that the number with our pods that we learned is that if it's over 90% their total hours that are going towards client projects, we will typically start to see issues on the QA side. So we look at the utilization of the team on a weekly and a monthly basis, and then we can kind of predict whether or not we need to add another team member to that team, or maybe break up the pod and open up a new pod. That's definitely something that we look at. This will absolutely help you to avoid burnout as well. Your team members need to know that, you're not just going to keep pushing them until they break. And then what happens, they'll burn out, they'll quit, then you lose people. So that's really important to understand. It's just like having the operations team, specifically the operations manager, looking at that utilization of the team in terms of hours. Well, first you got to establish what that is for you. I would say it's probably going to be about 90% for you too, but making sure that we're not burning people out and then proactively adding people to the team. Other quick tips on the operations side of it is making sure that the operations team is helping people to advance and get promotions. So that's something that we do, is we look at the people that are advancing to new positions, that are growing within the company, learning new skills. It's really important to us. And so we track that. And that's actually something that the operations manager is also responsible for. And then there's a collaboration on that between ops and HR, because HR then, if the ops team is doing what they need to do and making sure that people are advancing and learning and wanting to learn and grow within the company, the HR needs to make sure that those trainings are created so that those people can actually accomplish their own personal goals, which is great. And that's basically it. I know I went through a lot of things very quickly, but those are going to be my top things for your operations team. And a lot of this is geared around the operations manager and what they need to be responsible for so that you have a great, well-oiled machine that doesn't break. And so if you are the operations manager and the CEO, then obviously these are things that you need to take into consideration, and you can start to build processes and SOPs and managing these KPIs. If you have an operations manager, then maybe on your next meeting with that individual, you can start to talk about some of these items, and anything that's missing, slowly start to introduce those in. But I promise you, if you follow this framework, you will start to see a big difference in your operations. Things will move more smoothly, and ultimately you're going to have better margins, and you're going to be a much more profitable, healthy agency. So that's it for today on operations KPIs. If you have any questions, of course, you can reach out and ask me a question. I'll do my best to get back to you as fast as possible. And I hope to see you on the next episode. Bye. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, it would mean so much to me if you could share it with your friends, family, and basically anyone who will find the same value in this episode that you did. And to get the latest from me, then let's definitely connect on social media. You can go to Facebook, facebook.com/Dude Agency, or Instagram @dudeagency.io, or you can check us out on YouTube on our YouTube channel. And then, of course, you can always visit our website at dudeagency.io, where you can see all of our other episodes of Operation Agency Freedom. You can also register for any live trainings that we have going on how to run a highly profitable agency. And of course, you can see how we help digital agencies with the people, the processes, and the education so that they can take on more projects and scale profitably. Thanks again, and I will see you next time.